This is the Motivated Business Show, hosted by me, Mark Terrell, the author of Motivated, the Reluctant Leader's Guide to Building a Business that Sets You Free. In my book, I share the 7-step process to get the measure of your business. M.E.A.S.U.R.E is an acronym that stands for Mirror, Evaluate, Action, Systemize, Unify, Review, and Energize. On each episode, I'll be chatting to a business owner about how they stay motivated and how they've got the measure of their business. So without further ado, let's find out who's joining me on this episode. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Motivated Business Show with me, Mark Terrell. Today's guest I met a few years ago. He was doing something completely different than what he's doing now. It's all about content marketing then, but he's moved on to other things. So looking forward to the conversation with Chris, which is coming up. Just before we do that though, just to mention the book that I wrote, I'd be mentioning the 7-step process that I share in that book a bit later in the podcast. And also, if you'd like to contribute to keep the podcast on the road as it was, then buy me a coffee is a great way to do that. And if you buy me 2 coffees, then I will send you a copy of my book. So hopefully that's an incentive enough just to give us a little bit. Chris, welcome.
Hi Mark, it's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me to join you today.
Looking forward to that conversation. Just before we do that though, just give you the opportunity to introduce yourself properly.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks very much, Mark. Yeah, my name's Chris Marr. I'm based in Scotland here. And I am a recent author of Become an Authoritative Coach, which is really a book about earning respect from your clients mainly, but it is really a book about communication, right? A book about how we can be better communicators. What we found is that people are diminishing their authority accidentally in their communication. And that not only holds them back from doing their best work, but ultimately holds the people around them from doing their best work. So whether you're a leader or a consultant or a coach, it's how can you step into your authority to help your clients do their best work. It's all about doing our best work and high performance. So that's my most recent project. And that sort of builds the foundation probably of the context of the work that we're going to do today, Mark.
Definitely. I had downloaded the Kindle version a while ago, so I've been flicking through that in the last day or so. So loads of content in there, great stuff. But before we do that, I mentioned that I've met you at the Content Marketing Academy events back in the day, didn't I? And so you were doing marketing then. Now you're doing something completely different. And one of the concepts in the book that really sort of resonate with me is the people pleaser to empowering peer, is what you empowering peer, I think you could call it. And so let's start at that place, because I think when it comes to coaching, it's an important concept for everyone to understand.
Yeah, there's this dynamic. It's difficult. It's somewhat difficult to explain, but I'll try and keep it simple. There's this dynamic between your need to be liked by other people and your own self-respect, and how those two play a part in the amount of respect that you get from your clients. And so you're trying to play around with these levers and think, well, why is it that my clients don't turn up for their calls on time? Or why do they not meet their deadlines? Or why do they seem to be dragging their feet? Or why do they not take the work seriously? There's lots of ways that this sort of lack of authority shows up. And what I've realized is that the level of respect you get from your clients can never be greater than the respect you have for yourself and your work. And so what the journey that we want to take someone on is, and this is for about 80% of the people I work with, would probably say that their people-pleasing tendencies are holding them back somewhat from doing their best work. The idea is to help them overcome the need to be liked, whilst at the same time increasing their own standards and creating their own boundaries and their own self-respect for their work first, and the outcome being an increase in the respect they get from their clients. And so they go through this journey of like reducing their need to be liked, increasing their level of self-respect to the point where they get to this position where they're like, okay, I can now see myself sort of leaping over this impasse, which I call the peer threshold. And the gap there is usually something like we would probably call it imposter syndrome, where it's all this stuff that shows up, in terms of deservedness, um, in terms of like getting high performing clients and results and all that sort of stuff. And it's like making that leap. A good example is a really practical example of this is encouraging my clients to, even when they don't feel ready, to like step into a really high stakes, difficult conversation, giving them as much preparation as they can. But part of it is literally about taking the leap, about stepping into that uncomfortable, difficult place. And that's them taking a vote for themselves to become that empowering peer, with the outcome or the intention being is that regardless of the status or job title of the client that you're working with, you can step into any room, virtual or otherwise, and see and believe yourself to be at peer level or above with the people that you're working with.
That's a really interesting concept, and I absolutely 100% agree with what you said, because I've sort of been on that journey myself at the beginning, when I was being sort of encouraged to start my coaching consultancy business, whatever you want to call it. Someone was sort of saying, "Well, surely you can can't you see that you've got something to offer?" And I think some people can't really see it. I could see that I had 30 years of experience to share. I see that, but I didn't see how I could share that with other people, which is where the coaching comes in. And so I think it'd be a good time just to think about the difference between a coach and a consultant. And
Right.
one of the things that I've picked out from your book that you've said is a consultant solves a problem and a coach will ask, are we solving the right problem? And that sort of
Yeah.
sums it up nicely for me. But how would you expand on that with regards to coaching and consulting?
Yeah. This is like I remember when I published this for the very first time, it was the one I got the most replies. Like, and the replies were, there was depth to them. People were like, they were challenging the idea. And I was
Right.
like, this is great because we should be challenging this idea of it. And so the best way to think about this is like a seesaw, right? I don't know if that translates across all languages, but this idea that there's a seesaw happening. You've got coach and consultant, right? Full on coach, full on consultant. The idea is to be one or the other and not try to be somewhere in the middle, right? Where you're hedging, right? So the consultant says, here's exactly what you need to do, right? I've got 30 years experience. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. I've seen all the mistakes, and considering everything I've heard and everything I've seen, here's exactly what you need to do right now. There's a time and a place for that, Mark, right? Agreed? Like there's so the seesaw is balanced one way fully. Now, as a coach and someone who believes in the power of coaching, I would say 20% of the time there's a consultant moment or a consulting moment where you're saying, look, this is exactly what you need to do. It's either a standard we're trying to meet, or something's just true or factual, or you're trying to break through a behavioral aspect perhaps that's holding a client back. But that's when it starts to tip for me, and it's like, right, actually, if we look at what a coach does, a coach is asking more questions, curious questions, going much deeper into it. And so for 80% of the time, and I would argue even the coach is that's the leading hat you're wearing. You're curious, you're asking questions, you're trying to overcome resistance, you're trying to understand what's holding your clients back from being successful. You're really trying to even help them to see the world differently or change their perspective or thinking on something. Maybe you want them to buy into a new idea or whatever it is. And coaching, I find what the coach does. The coach is making sure we're doing the right thing, we're doing it in the right order, but then there's times, absolutely, once you've done a lot of coaching, you can tip that seesaw back again to being that consultant and then tip it straight back again and start another coaching conversation. So that's the way I look at it. The coach and the consultant play different roles. And I think the pushback I often get is, but I can't just, just keep asking questions all the time. And I'm like, well, Right, so that's the muscle that most people need to practice. So we want to swing the pendulum fully one way with a lot of people, so we can start to strengthen the muscle of asking better questions, creating moments of self-discovery, creating breakthroughs with their clients. That's the advising bit is not the not the bit that people need help with, right? Everybody's good at that. It's the coaching piece. And so once they've figured that out and once they've strengthened that muscle, we can go swing the pendulum back to sort of more central place, right, where they're both coaching and consulting.
Yeah, I
You know when
absolutely
to be a
agree.
coach and when to be a consultant.
You just do need both. I think if you're helping your client, there is times when you have expertise and experience that you just need to share at the right time. But obviously, you don't want to be in that position all the time because it's like training as opposed to coaching. You want to get out of the person what they really want and what they're trying to achieve. And I think what I tend to, well, what I realise now is that most clients don't really know what they want. It's only when you start opening up things and having conversations about things when they suddenly realise actually there are other ways of looking at things. So one of the things that a coach does is help their client to look at things in a different way. Things particularly that they can't change, because certain things we can't change. So we just got to think about how we can
Yeah.
change the way we think about them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oftentimes clients even come to you thinking they know what they want, but once you start to dig in, you realize that there's a different motivation there, right? I always think, like, I just reflected on a conversation I had with a client yesterday. One of the first questions I asked, or one of the first threads I was trying to pull on, was what's driving you to want this change? Is it something that's is it proactive or reactive? Is it internal or external? What is it that's driving you? And that is a great place oftentimes to start as a coach. You don't know the answer to that question. Only they know that. Like, in the it's inside them, and you have to draw it out, right? And that's all quite. That's you can't be a consultant mindset isn't going to achieve that there.
Yeah, I think also, well, I don't know whether you found this as well, where most people are frightened of working with a coach because they think that it's just going to highlight all their weaknesses and expose them to all this negativity. But I do the opposite. The first thing I want to do is, well, what drives you and what's your character strengths that you really need to be aware of and how are you using them? So is that something that you come across with regards to the mindset of a coach and also the way they coach?
Yeah, I think I'm a big advocate of leaning into strengths, as opposed to trying to like anybody. This is the thing. Anyone, in fact, we do this every day, can pick somebody's faults. Now that's not a skill. Like, we can judge other people very easily. That's not what coaching's all about. It's about finding the strengths, bringing out their potential. I think when you work with, I find this myself. If I'm working with ambitious people, like, you don't have this very easy. You're leaning into their already developed intrinsic motivation, and I find that's like where I can be the best coach for people. Like, I'm sometimes trying to keep up with them, right? They're really ambitious, and yeah. So I agree with you. I think it's not always. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy, right? But there is a focus on the word that's coming to mind for me, Mark, is compassion, right? It's like everything we do, even if it's very direct and we're challenging them on something, a behavioral aspect, for example, it's not because we're deliberately trying to find a hole or a gap or a weakness. We're trying to do it so that because we see a potential that they maybe can't, and we're trying to bring that out of them somehow. That's how I look at it anyway. I don't know what you think, but that's what springs to mind when you talk about it.
No, I think that sums it up nicely. And as you mentioned the word challenge, I think it's a good time to introduce one of the concepts that you mention a couple of times in your book, and it sort of resonates with me because I use a similar sort of model, and that is the idea of radical candor. So
Mm-hmm.
it's Kim Scott's work, and do you want to just explain about what that is and why you think it's important with regards to a coach using that sort of concept?
Yeah, when you write your own book, you kind of really want to have your own frameworks in it.
Hmm.
And this is one of those times where I thought, I just teach this all the time. And part of me including it in the book was really to just give credit to Kim's work because it's been so fundamental and foundational in helping people to shift that pendulum swing that we talked about earlier. And she's just done great work to make it really simple for people to understand and get. And so this whole idea is, the one thing that a lot of people are uncomfortable with is having difficult conversations, but the one thing that will help you grow is having more difficult conversations, more high stakes difficult conversations. And that's
Hmm.
both in your personal life, in your work life, and like across your whole life. And also it's not just your personal growth, but the growth of the people around you as well. And so our job, I guess, is to help people feel more confident about stepping into those difficult conversations. So radical candor teaches us how to maintain a sense, an explicit and implicit sense of high caring for an individual, whilst also going straight at the thing that's a performance issue, quality issue, whatever it might be, with the intention that this is coming from a good place. Because if I don't tell you, who is going to tell you? Like, I can't. One of the professional leaps that I made was I can't sit here and watch you screw this up. I find it difficult to sit here and watch you make this mistake. It's like what we talked about earlier. If you see someone driving off a cliff, are you just going to sit and watch them like do it?
Hmm.
Kim Scott calls ruinous empathy, and and I think that's one of the greatest things about understand, where we see the thing, but we don't say anything about the thing because we're too obsessed with our own feelings of awkwardness and difficultness, that we can't have that difficult conversation. So a big part of all of this is overcoming not only your need to be liked, but overcoming it being about you,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, this isn't about you. This is, you know, your, will you accept that moving from ruinous empathy to radical candor is a shift in professionalism? You've got all the amateurs are over on the left hand side. If you're looking at our quadrants on the ruinous empathy side, coaches have made that shift to radical candor, where they can knowing and can show that it's coming from a good place, a place where they care about the other. That's the
Yeah.
point comes when we get frustrated, resentful, or angry about a poor performance, and our ability to show that we care slips, and we become assholes.
Yeah.
And Kim Scott calls that obnoxious aggression. And so we're playing with those three. We can see, right, there's just a fine line between it all,
Yeah.
right? Your ability to go from not saying anything to challenging directly, your ability to losing your ability to show that you care. And it's trying to find that central point. That compass is teaching us to say, actually, it's both. It's
Yeah.
both and.
Yeah.
That's the work of Kim Scott, but it's the work that we're arguably trying to do every single day with our clients.
And it's such an important leadership principle, isn't it? It's about doing the right thing, being that in that position to, like you say in the book, when you talk about, if you saw someone with spinach in their teeth, would you say when they're just about to go in front and speak in front of an audience? And that's the difference, where some people might not say because they might, make them feel uncomfortable, but actually it's doing the right thing and at the right time to allow things to happen. If you don't do those things, then you're not really stepping up. So leadership is a really important leadership principle, and I'm going to sort of allude to something that's very similar to radical candor and link it to the leadership principles. But I think it's an ideal opportunity here to talk about coaching and leadership and how they fit together. Because if you are in a leadership role, having a coaching skill, I think is important, isn't it?
I mean, arguably, it's like the number one skill for a leader to develop because
Mm-hmm.
once you step out of the technical of work, like if you're a doer, oftentimes people spend a lot of their early stage career in the technical aspects of the work, right? Doing the work. They have a leader or manager or whatever. But there is a difference between management skill, leadership skill, and coaching skill. And so when you step out the technical aspects of doing work and you step into management and leadership, your work is very much, I don't know if this is well, I don't feel like it's well known enough that your job is now to be a world class communicator, because arguably 90%, maybe even more of your work is going to be dictated by your ability to communicate well. And that's from pitching ideas to your team, that's from collaborating with your team, bringing out the potential in others in your team, being able to facilitate powerful one on ones with your team, being able to deal with critical, direct performance issue, quality issue, feedback, and also giving praise, which oftentimes gets missed because we're so obsessed with the critical piece, try to get that right, that we forget about praise. And praise is a skill in itself as well when it comes to communication. There's all of that, and you realize that actually, if other people around you are the ones doing the work, then your job is cater that you can be. And a big part of that is learning how to about, like we've talked about already. Is it any different than client work? You're here to help set the conditions for other people to do their best work.
Yeah.
And because you sit outside, you can objectively review behavioral aspects that could be challenging for them, and you can objectively help them dig in to aspects of their professional work that are holding them back as well. So there's lots that you are able to do. But the first one would be accepting the accepting the challenge to step up as a communicator. And I think a lot of people, when you ask them, they think they're okay at communicating. I don't necessarily think that they feel like it's a thing that is going to be a game changer for them, but it absolutely is a game changer for them.
Absolutely. We haven't really talked about your current work, Chris.
Yeah.
So I think it's about time we talked about how how coaching is important, how maybe setting up a coaching business 2024 and how you can go about that, because essentially that's
Yeah.
who you work with, isn't it? You work with those
Right.
people to support their endeavours to bring a coaching business into life.
It's funny that at the beginning you'd said about the CMA, the Content Marketing Academy that I ran before in a previous life, you could say. But when I look back, I really see that I was doing a lot of coaching. It might have been a marketing organization for business owners, but ultimately I didn't do any of their marketing for them. I was being a coach or a teacher, I would have probably said at the time. And so I think it's a natural, and it's great to be here in 2024 and you look back over the last 10 years or so and you realize that how your like how what you're doing today was really built upon what happened 10 years ago. And so it's probably no surprise really that I find myself in a position now where I'm coaching leaders and coaches and consultants how to be more authoritative in their communication and authoritative in their positioning in the market and authoritative in how they build their coaching programs and agency programs that they have for their clients. And so from the 1st of April just passed, so this is 11 weeks since I started my business. The business is building into a private client business and a group coaching business for established coaches and consultants and leaders that want to earn more respect from their clients and be indispensable to their clients. And so it's just been a really interesting transition, and it's amazing what 10 years can do for you in terms of I would say knowing what not to do when you start a business.
Right. Yeah.
And honestly, there's just some stuff that you can't read in books. You can read it in books, sorry, but I don't. There's just some stuff that you just need to cut your teeth on and learn the loss. You spend the money on the wrong things, you make the wrong decisions, and 10 years is enough time to learn how to do things a bit better, hopefully in the future. If you're learning from your mistakes, that is. So I find myself, in my 40s now, starting a business again, and feeling a much stronger position personally and professionally to which I hear about. Even now, it's been closed for 5 years, still on a weekly basis. I got a text from someone the other day with their callback memories on Facebook or whatever from 7 years ago
Yeah.
on stage at CMA, and people remember it as such a great impact. And I hope that this company that I'm building, the Authoritative Coach, can have an even greater impact on the people around me, for longer. So yeah, it's just a great, just a really, I'm really grateful to be in a position to have something to offer and something that people will find valuable.
Yeah, definitely. What you said, definitely you were doing a lot of coaching back in the time when I was engaging with the Content Marketing Academy content, and the live events were spectacular. But some things just you just need to move on from, and the important thing is we learnt a lot from those experiences, and you can't take that away from you, and you always have those things. So Chris, I'm going to give you an opportunity to sit back for a couple of minutes. I'm going to share a few things about the 7-step process and what we've talked about. So this is the 7-step process, which I call how to get the measure of your business, and it always starts on the left-hand side here with mirror. So understanding yourself is so important. Understanding what drives you, understand other aspects of your personality, and also your character strengths is so important. And if you want to be a coach, then understanding yourself is important. And I've written down something that it's in Chris's book. Becoming an authoritative coach begins with how you think about yourself. So if you haven't got a clear idea about yourself, and that's what the mirror process is all about, and that part of the process, I should say, is fundamental. And how can you coach unless you have a clear understanding of yourself? So that's the 7-step process, and what stands out particularly with regards to what we've already talked about. But what I want to move on to is something that is very much in line with the radical candor that Chris has already shared, and this is a very similar concept which we call high challenge, high support. And I've just got there, you can see on the screen the differences between what high support, high challenge on the right hand side is where we want. That's where we get commitment, where we get high energy, purpose, and we're inspiring. And the other options are not optimal. So we want to always have that mindset of high challenge, high support, not only with our clients, but also ourselves. So have a position of high challenge, high support. And when I started my coaching business, I was very too supportive than challenge. Now I have to work on the challenge and bring it up so it's high challenge, high support, as opposed to high support and sort of mediocre challenge. It's about that, making sure that it's maintained and you are challenging your clients as much as you're supporting them. That's how I sort of connected with what Chris shared, particularly with the radical candor. And just one other thing I want to share with regards to motivations and understanding the difference between what motivates you with regards to your coaching and what might catch you out. So think about, if you are connecting here with particularly the coaches that are thinking about expanding the business or starting a new business, what is it that's really driving you to do that? And so these are the 9 motivations to work. These are the things that drive you to do things. And if you're in touch with what drives you, then you can make sure those things are being fulfilled in your work. A lot of coaches will set up their business wanting to make a difference. That's one of their most important drivers. But what I've seen in the past, because I've done lots of motivational maps with coaches, and what we find is that this one is the problem, not in that it's driving them, but it's actually a negative. They don't see the importance of of making a sale, because ultimately the drive for money is not very strong, so they don't really focus much on it. And if we don't focus on making a sale, then how can our business survive? So it's one of those things that comes up all the time when I'm particularly working with anyone that's in the coaching business. So that's a few bits and pieces to share with and connect with what Chris has already spoke about. Let's see if Chris has got any comments to make about what I've just shared.
I think that's interesting to see the different models, understanding how you can use them as a coach to help clients just see the world a bit differently and understand where their gaps are. I think arguably when you start a coaching business, you do have to accept that there are things that you're going to have to do whether you like it or not, but also accepting the challenge as a worthy what's the word I'm looking for? Like a worthy competitor, essentially. It's, can I step up to this challenge?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's two things I think that are interesting here. One is, if you do believe that you're here to make an impact on the world, then go make money, because that's then how that transfers into impact, right? So it's not about the money, it's about what the money allows you to do. And so getting clients allows you to make more impact. Getting money in the bank and cash in the business allows you to speculate that money into greater impact. And so if you're truly driven by impact, then you're going to need to get cash in your business to do that. So it's try to draw motivation, like draw the money negative into the actual motivation that you do have and how that fuels it. Mm-hmm. And so I think you can make a positive relationship with money. I do agree with you that is one of the challenges. How do you bring it into your already intrinsic motives? I think is important. Certainly has been for me.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I was thinking there was about the whole support and challenge model. Mm-hmm. It reminds me of a transactional analysis model called the drama triangle.
Yeah.
Where you see a lot of people, they want to solve the problem, right? So someone in your team comes to you with a problem. You're like, right, out of the way, I've got this, and you dive in and try to solve it. Similarly, I find a lot of coaches that I work with do that for their clients, and they say to me, well, why am I stressed out? Why am I overworked? Why have I got so much on my plate and I can't get new clients? I've got too much. And it's like, you're trying to solve everything for them. You're trying to do the work. And by doing that, you're actually holding them back from growing. And so part of it's about realizing that you're not here to solve for them. You're not here to provide the solution. You're here to create the conditions for them to do that work and solve those problems for themselves. And so I think that just what you were talking about, that's just the two things that really came to mind for me. I think those are really important models, and helping people really look in that mirror and be honest with themselves for a change is helpful.
Chris, sadly our time has run out, and I could talk to you for hours. There's so much more in your book and all the things that you share. I think you've got lots of wisdom, and I think what you're doing now is so valuable in that I think coaches need coaches, but also a bit more than that. They need a bit more of encouragement, and also giving them a bit more about how they can actually make that input, like you say, and releasing them from maybe the things that are holding them back. So I wish you well. As you mentioned, you're only 11 weeks into your new business, but you told me before we came on air that it's going okay so far. So hopefully it'll continue, and I wish you well with that. So again, just thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Mark. It's really great to talk through all these topics with you.
Great stuff. So there's Chris. So if anything that we've resonated with, then please reach out to either one of us, and you can see what Chris does with regards to supporting coaches particularly, and trainers, and anybody in that sort of consultancy space. And I highly recommend getting Chris's book, The Authoritative Coach. Loads of content in there that he shares that is so important, and great value as well. Right, so just to wrap things up then, just to remind you about my book. You can get that book from me, direct from me, by buying me a cup of coffee, 2 cups of coffee, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show. And you can also get the book from Amazon either in Kindle or in paperback versions. So thank you for those that joined us live. If you catch this on replay and you've got any comments to make, feel free to make them. Myself or Chris would more than be happy to answer any questions or make any comments about what you share. Any contribution is well received and makes it all worthwhile. So thank you for those people that do. So that's it for today. Really enjoyed the conversation with Chris. And if you have anybody or you would like to join me on the podcast anytime, get in touch. And I'm sure you've got great things to share. So do that. But for now, have a great day. And I will see you very soon on the next edition of the Motivated Business Show.